Okay, so I've been watching and waiting over the past month just to see how events have been unfolding. And from my perspective, it looks quite insane out there. Insanity comes up quite a bit in my reflection on this physical world and what is going on and what is taking place here. Humanity is completely going utterly insane. And it's so important for us to wake up out of this nonsense, this insanity, because if we don't, our world is going to be going into utter chaos, destruction, and who knows what. So the title of this video is Ritual Sacrifice of Whitney Houston, Madonna's SuperBowl Sermon, Queen's Jubilee, and the Return of the Divine Feminine. And I had to do this video simply because there are a number of patterns that I saw over the weekend and in the past couple of weeks that are reflecting back to me that the theme for this year, before the 2012 Olympics or coming into 2012 Olympics, the theme is the goddess. And for those of us who have eyes to see through the deception program, the big lie by the power control force that sits around the tables and plans these dark, sinister plans and programs and agendas. And basically what we're experiencing is a rollout of those agendas, because everything is well scripted, well choreographed, and well played out by the power control force, those that run this world. This is the biggest theater stage. This is the biggest drama happening right now in this year 2012. So let's look at some of the things that are happening. When we look at, one of the things that came up for me was the birth of Blue Ivy, Jay-Z and Beyonce's baby, which happened, I believe, back in January. And then Madonna's sermon performance at the SuperBowl, and the Diamond Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth, which was marked on February the 6th, but the actual event will not be taking place until the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of June, which is very interesting because it's the day before the Venus transit, June 6th. Everything here is by design. Nothing is by accident. And everything, all roads lead to the power control force and their agenda. So one of the things that we have to look at, and also with the sacrifice to the goddess of Whitney Houston, or the Goddess of Whitney Houston, which happened on February 11th, 2012, which is very significant. 11 means as a number from a numerological standpoint, from the power control force standpoint, means death. And if you add the numbers of February 11th, 2012, the number equals 9, another 9/11. And we're going to look at the numbers and numerology in terms of Whitney Houston and why I feel that her dying was simply an agenda by the power control force. It was so clear to me. I mean, there's just so much to see that's so blatantly available that any common sense person could put the dots together, but I don't believe that most people will see what it is that I'm going to share with you. The power control freaks lay claim to the divine right of kings to rule, and as we can see, they are using the goddess and the feminine to facilitate one of their many agendas in these last days Armageddon rollouts plan. Now, to this day, just as in ancient and Egypt and Babylon, they must commit human sacrifice continually to generate the fear which generates the energy they need to keep this planet in a low vibration of fear, so that they can maintain and control and manipulate the masses. Now, they need to maintain control of the masses through what I call the hypnotic trance state. And they can only do that if they keep you in a low vibration of fear. Now, this human sacrifice rituals are supposedly performed, for the most part, they've been performed in secret or without people's knowledge. But it seems that they're wanting people to know or to become normalized that these rituals are actually taking place while the masses are watching. That seems to be the reality in which they're directing us. And it was definitely shown in the Grammy Awards yesterday, and it's definitely showing up in things like the Super Bowl. So they're really, really exposing themselves to a level which I find surprising. But I think what they're trying to see is how many people are really going to be able to see. They want to test and see if people are waking up. And they don't care. They don't care. And maybe it's something that they want to do. They just want to flaunt and taunt this behavior. Very interesting. Anyway, because these human sacrifice rituals have predominantly been in behind closed doors. But then many of these human sacrifices have also been performed en masse in the form of manipulated wars, disease, sporting events, like what we just saw the past weekend in the Super Bowl and the Olympics. There's also mass ritual events or sacrificial events that most people don't know about. And then the Grammys was definitely the surrounding the agenda on the Grammys this weekend was simply blatantly outright with the death of Whitney Houston, clearly a significant sign of a ritual sacrifice. And I'll explain more as we go along. So what we are dealing with here again is stems around the creation myth, the fall of man, paradise lost. Yes, humanity has for a very, very long time not been able to reconnect to the awareness lost, awareness that we are. And we have been constantly trying to return to our original knowing state, but always seem to lose our way, and we continue to lose our way until we become conscious of the manipulation. Yes, that's why I share at this level, because I want you to become conscious of the way in which you are being manipulated, the way in which you are being deceived. You need to see the big lie from a bigger perspective. You need to have the eyes to see through the deception plan that these power control force sit around these tables and develop to manipulate you. You have to come to know this, and until you do, you cannot wake up out of this hypnotic trance state. Now, the power control force is not a loving God or a divine creator, but deliberately aims to manipulate who you really are and destroy your connection to that which you are, which is divine wisdom. It is the awareness of this wisdom that we possess, each and every one of us, that keeps us absolutely worshiping those who think that run this world, who can thereby fabricate an eternal state of subservience. That's what they're doing. They want us to be subservient. They want us to give away our power. They want us to acquiesce, and give our power away to them, so that we can continue to be controlled and manipulated. But that has to stop. The power control force agenda is complete annihilation of consciousness. Yes, complete annihilation of consciousness, that which you are. That is their goal. They do not care about the human species. They want to completely control every aspect of your life. And that is not their right. It is your divine right to control every aspect of your life. And as long as you continue to acquiesce, to give your power away to this system, then you will slowly but incrementally lose what you consider to be your freedom and sovereignty. And Your freedom and sovereignty is your divine right. You must come to know that. So make no mistake. Whitney Houston's death was a sacrifice. I'm not going to get into the details of how it was organized. There are a lot of people, not a lot, there are a few people out there who have different perspectives. This is just a perspective. But it was the last act in a triple header of a goddess ritual that was playing out. One being with Madonna's sermon at the SuperBowl halftime, on the 5th of February, the Jubilee of the Queen Elizabeth, her 60 years of being in power was February the 6th, and then February 11th, the death of Whitney Houston. That was a culmination of this triple header event. Now, there's a YouTube interview that Whitney Houston did that I listened to. I'll post it on the description here. I encourage you to listen to it. It was very telling. Before her Nothing But Love tour a couple years ago, she was emphasizing that people want to hear and feel love. And I thought that was so beautiful, because that's totally what I'm about. It's really about supporting people to move into the heart. She spoke out against the strange and dark-spirited stage and video performances that were proliferating the music scene, with devil worshipping, Freemason, occult rituals, torture, mind control, martial law, mutilation and pornography, and transhumanism. I mean, she was mentioning how the landscape of the music industry was changing. And not only the music industry, but this type of energy, or this type of dark, spirited energy is proliferated all throughout the world. We know that. And so clearly, just by that, I was getting the indication that she was not happy with what was going on in the industry in which she was a part of. And most people won't speak out about what's going on in the industry. It's almost like the family secret, or this family. I don't know how many people know about, within the industry, the music industry, or even the acting industry, the real dynamics of what's going on there. I would have to say, though, that there are a lot of people who know, but they just don't say anything. And yeah, that's just the nature of that industry. And this must stop, because those who are in these industries that do know, they have a responsibility. And she knew that, and her conscience was, obviously she wanted to come clean. And because of that, she was isolated and, I believe, taken out. She stated how she was bringing love back to the business, because that's what we need and want in music. And I thought that was beautiful, because that is so true. And she was bringing back the truth of what we are all to bring into this physical world system, love. And we are allowing ourselves to be duped, manipulated into this dark, sinister program. So at the pre-Grammy party, which was held at the hotel where Whitney died, that she was to attend, instead of canceling that event, they had a minute's silence. Okay? And this is the picture that they showed of her. Her head held up and her arms extended, and it looks like, like the picture reminds me of Jesus on the cross. I couldn't believe that when I saw that. That was the picture that they showed during their 1 minute of silence. While this was just hours after her death, and her body was still lying upstairs in the bathtub, which is where they said she was found. I couldn't believe that. If it were me, I would have canceled that event. It was her manager, Clive Davis, event. And he could have canceled it, but he decided to go on with it, saying that she would have wanted them to continue with it. I found that very, very suspicious. Her being in the same hotel with this gala event the day before the Grammys, it's just all, there's too many coincidences. And not only that, the reports state that several people, including her mother and cousin, Dionne Warwick, had just spoken to her an hour or so before, confirming they were sitting at the table at this pre-gala event put on by Clive Davis. Reports say that she was, and her mother and Dionne Warwick stated that she was in good spirits. So this doesn't sound like a person to me who is going to either take her life or yeah, it's just very, very suspicious, especially with it being on February 11th. February being a high month for ritual sacrifice with the power control force, and the day in which it happened, which was the moon was at perigee. And this is an occultation, an astronomical occultation. So I'm putting all the pieces together. It just really smells of a really serious deception. Or what I said, a ritual sacrifice. So the only person who knows what happened to Whitney Houston is Whitney. And there are too many coincidences not to see the dots are connecting here. As we all know that numbers play a huge role in the occult. So let's take a look at some of the numbers that are involved here. Whitney died on the 4th floor of the Hilton. 4 is symbolized by the 4 corners of the earth, or sun god worship, which is a foundation upon which this 3D dimensional illusory reality was created. 4 seasons also represents the 4 seasons of the 4 quarters, which I'll mention in the symbology, symbolism in the SuperBowl halftime show. It's going to show up there too. Whitney died on the eve of the 54th Grammy Awards. 5 + 4 = 9. Whitney Houston, each letter in her name can be tied to numerology. Her name adds up to 9. The number 9 means the fall into death. Whitney Houston's age is 48. 4 + 8 = 12. And 1 + 2 = 3. 3 is very symbolic in the Trinity, the pyramid, that this happened in 3 significant female-related events: Madonna's sermon at the Super Bowl, the Queen's Jubilee on February 6th, and Whitney Houston's death on February 11th. Okay, very, very symbolic here. Now, the date of the death, 2/11/2012, is 11. It happened on the 11th. But when we add up the numbers, again, they add up to 9. Again, 9 means the fall into death. Someone called 911 or 911 at 3:34 p.m. She was declared dead. Whitney was declared dead at 3:55 p.m. on the 4th floor. 3 + 5 + 5 = 13. 13 is a number of human sacrifice associated with the Bohemian Grove, the Illuminati, secrecy of what is the secrecy of the world systems, and what actually drives them is perpetuated symbolically through the number 13. Again, 11 is the number of death. To connect to our original state, I want to emphasize here, we must eliminate the hold numbers have on our consciousness. Numbers are very, very significant, and what keep us in this hypnotic trance state that we are in. A week before the Super Bowl, Madonna described on Anderson Cooper the spiritual importance attributed to her halftime show. This halftime show is a show leading up to the ritual sacrifice of Whitney Houston. And here's what Madonna said. The Super Bowl is kind of like the Holy of Holies in America. I'll come in on halfway of the church experience, and I'm going to have to deliver a sermon. It'll have to be very impactful. So this is what Madonna looked like, very similar to the mall, the Bohemian Grove Bohemond, which I look at her hand up and her hand down, very similar, and look at her garment on her head and what she's wearing, very similar to this. But what she's basically saying is sending a satanic message to the world, but most people are not going to be able to see that. And so, for those who have eyes to see through this deception program, the wisdom goddess, we are all transcending or coming back into the knowing or the balance of the yin, the feminine. But what the power control force is trying to do is to divert that energy and use it for their dark, sinister agenda. So, first up was the Madonna Minerva goddess of the Hebrew goddess from antiquity through its manifestations in Kabbalah and in the developing myth of Lilith. Lilith is bestiality. So I'm saying that Madonna in the halftime show that she did, the halftime sermon that she did on February 5th, was representing the Minerva goddess of the Hebrew, or the Hebrew goddess from the antiquity through its manifestation in Kabbalah in the developing myth of Lilith. Right? This was a picture that we have of her. Now, Madonna's, what we can see clearly, if for those of you who were able to see the halftime show, it was a 13 minute sermon, was massive ritual, one that was witnessed by billion viewers, but understood by so few. Remember, the number 13, it is a number of human sacrifice. Bohemian Grove of secrecy, that is a secrecy of the world systems, and what actually drives them is perpetuated symbolically through this number. It is rather appropriate that this Kabbalah initiate, Madonna, referred to the SuperBowl as a Holy of Holies, as it was the name of the most sacred place in Solomon's temple. No one was ever permitted to enter the Holy of Holies but the high priest. This privilege was only granted on the Day of Atonement to offer the blood of sacrifice and incense before the mercy seat. Madonna's analogy was therefore telling throughout her performance. So I want to show you Lilith. This is a picture of the myth Lilith. And in Madonna's halftime show, she was at her feet. I thought that was quite interesting. But also, we have the owls here. Those were not shown up in the halftime show, but there was definitely influences of Roman and Egyptian symbology throughout, and so you really couldn't determine exactly. They have all kinds of symbols that they were using from all over the place. The power control force worship a large stone owl or horned bird, the great god Moloch, the horned beast of the bull, reference to human sacrifice. This owl symbolism also refers to a woman's breasts. She was called Lilith in the ancient Egypt, and symbolized by an owl. So there we have it again. Now, Minerva is the moon goddess, was the Roman goddess of wisdom. Yes, you, divine wisdom. You are divine wisdom. So Minerva, she is to represent, Madonna is to represent the goddess of wisdom, learning, the arts, sciences, medicine, dying, trade, and war. Yes, the goddess of war, daughter of Jupiter, protectress of commerce, industry, and education. Minerva is often depicted with her sacred creature, an owl, which symbolizes her ties to wisdom. Now let's look at the emblem on the floor of the stage of the Super Bowl. The circle is a pagan symbol of the four elements: earth, air, fire, water, for the number 4, the or could equal the 4 corners. Remember, Whitney Houston died on the 4th floor. This was a ritual sacrifice in lieu of her death. Now, with W, if you see, you can look at this from, depending on where you're looking from, it looks like an M, or if you're looking from the other end, it could look like a W. So let's look at both of those. W equals wisdom, representing the owl of Minerva, which equals wisdom. The owl of Minerva accompanies Minerva in the Roman myths, seen as a symbol of wisdom because the owl is capable of seeing even in the dark, and of vigilance because the owl is awake at night. M, from what I see here, symbolizes the Minerval Church, the church for the initiates into secret societies, which comes out of Bohemian Grove in San Francisco. Now let's look at this young lady. Just heard about her, never heard about her before. Her name is Nicki Minaj. She wore a red coat to the Grammys, sporting a Versace emblem of Medusa, which I found quite interesting. There's Versace emblem of Medusa. And another thing that I found quite interesting is Medusa was one of the 3 Gorgon, daughters of Perse and Ceto. She was the only one of the Gorgons who was subject to mortality. She is celebrated by her personal charms and beauty of her locks, which are serpents. Serpent energy. Yes, the divine energy, divine serpent energy of the wisdom goddess. Neptune became enamored by her and obtained her favors in the temple of Minerva. I found that interesting coming up again. Minerva. Her hair is covered with snakes, symbolic of the serpent energy. Now this bust apparently of Medusa, just so happens, is on loan from the city of Rome now to the beginning of, or till the end of till February 19th. Again, this bust, apparently, Medusa is on loan from the city of Rome and is now being shown at the Legion of Honor Fine Arts Museum in San Francisco through February 19th. So there's no coincidences. They're all tied together. But this young lady came in. She doesn't look very happy. She was asked to wear this and by her, whoever. But this was part of the ritual. And apparently she did a song called Roman Exorcism, which a lot of people didn't like, at the Grammys. And it was all full of ritual sacrifice. And so they're really blatant, the power control force, in terms of using young people like this young lady. She probably has no idea what she is doing, but she is being used, like so many of the people in the recording and acting industry. And if people can't get wind of this, or if they know and willingly doing this, then they have to deal with their own conscience. Okay? Anyway, that's pretty much it. And the last thing I wanted to leave you with was the name Blue Ivy. Blue Ivy, the name of the little baby that was born of Jay-Z and Beyonce. And I thought that was a quite interesting name, and that she was born in January, last month. Blue was also the color used in ancient Egypt. Interesting how Egypt's coming up again, to represent the heavens. It symbolizes inspiration, sincerity, and spirituality. The name ivy comes from the plant that symbolizes eternity. Greek and Roman societies reserved the ivy for its longevity and hardiness. It has represented eternal life in numerous religions. Ivy, if you take the Y off of the IV, it equals 4. 4 is a occult number. Again, the foundation upon which creation is begun. And apparently, 4 is a favorite number of Jay-Z and Beyonce. I read some information on that, and I won't go into detail on that. But I hope you found this video of interest. Leave any questions or comments for me. Again, you are to become fearless. That is what you are to do. It's so important right now to wake up to this nonsense and its insanity. This is a very, very long video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Leave any questions or comments. And remember to stay in the heart. Don't get duped or deceived by these psychopaths that are running this world. And leave any questions or comments. Let me know what you think. Again, it's just a sharing. Bye.